Hey there, friends. David Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. And we're watching Huck TV right now. It's her channel. Huck is a 3-year-old Great Pyrenees that weighs... I just took her to the vet. And the vet said by 3 years old she should be just about filled out. And she weighs 115. And he said she's in perfect health. Happy, content, everything's good. Thank goodness. So, this is a missing persons episode, and we talk about missing people. And I appreciate you being here. We have 750 videos on this channel. You can watch it for a whole year. And we wish you would, because the more you watch, the more it helps us. And we need people watching a lot. Now, just recently, I was browsing through travel, and I know everyone out there likes to travel. And I've talked to you a lot about Mexico before, and missing people. Don't go to mainland Mexico. Don't. And the cartels have a firm grip on reality down there. They could pull up next to you on a street, throw you in a car, and no one will ever see you again. And don't think that doesn't happen. It does. Now, Baja California, a little different. I think I'd go to La Paz, and that would be about it. There were places, San Felipe and Puertecitos, that I used to go to. And talking to federal officers I know, cartels have moved into there. So there's no way I'm going there. The Caribbean. Certain countries you can go to in the Caribbean and be very safe. Other countries, no. It's not like it was 20 years ago where things were pretty safe. Not anymore. I'm going to read you an article that was in the BBC. And it says, mysterious disappearances spook residents of Caribbean island. The worst part is the mental torture, Patricia Joseph says. The gut-wrenching flashes of wondering what her mother's last moments were. The infinite state of limbo. 6 years after her mother's mysterious disappearance, Patricia still catches herself looking out of the distinctive orange-lined raincoat that Hyacinth Gage, 74, was wearing the day she vanished. And there's no clues. Tragically, Hyacinth was one of an ever-increasing number of people on the tiny Caribbean island of Antigua to disappear without a trace in what have some dubbed an epidemic, others a crisis. At least 9 have vanished in the last 2 years alone. That day back in 2019 started out ordinarily enough. Hyacinth, described as sprightly and self-sufficient, have gone to a routine checkup at a public hospital but failed to return. She's never been seen since. It was a trigger, an excruciating series of fruitless island-wide searches and desperate appeals. We became the detectives. My sister and I teamed up to look for leads. I went back to the hospital asking questions. She was able to verify that while her mother had completed scheduled blood tests, she had not shown up for an electrocardiogram. Further investigations revealed she had apparently handed her handbag briefly to another patient to keep an eye on it, but never came back. The bag was found by security staff the next day. The family was also able to track down a motorist who said she had given Hyacinth a lift to a location a short distance from the hospital. Police got angry at us for investigating and told us to stop. Hold it right there. If you are ever anywhere and police tell you to stop investigating, if it's in the USA, get a hold of federal agents or state agents and get the heck out of that area. Because that's a dangerous thing to hear from law enforcement. If you're in another country, I guarantee I'd leave. The reason being, a lot of these countries, the law enforcement is not good. They are lawless themselves. The police got angry at us for investigating, told us to stop. Then they became annoyed at our constant questions, so eventually we had to back off and just pray. Anniversaries are particularly painful. 6th of March would have been Hyacinth's 80th birthday. Hey, calm down. a milestone for which the family had long planned a big celebration. Instead, Patricia took the day off work to spend in a quiet reflection. The number of people to vanish in Antigua appears to be disproportionately high compared to the neighboring islands. Patricia says a notion supported by sources in several of the islands who spoke to BBC. In St. Kitts, for example, which has a population of 48,000, official police stats provided show that of the total 54 people reported missing in 2023 and 2024, all but 2 have been accounted for. The 2 remaining are believed to have been Haitian immigrants who have since left the country. Antigua's small size of 108 square miles, friends, that's like 10 miles by 10 miles. Home to fewer than 100,000 people makes the phenomena particularly perplexing. Speculation is rife. Theories range from the banal lack of will to investigate by an under-resourced and underpaid police force to the sinister. Other islands find bodies eventually, Patricia says. My mind goes all over the place wondering what happened. Police suggest organ trafficking. I've even thought of gang activity. Is it something they're required to do as an initiation? The disappearance of a 9-year-old girl on the 12th of March sent the nation and sparked extensive searches. Chantel Crump's body was found 2 days later in a case that was caused widespread public outrage and sent rumors into overdrive. A woman has been charged in Chantel's murder. Antigua's acting police commissioner, Everton Jeffers, acknowledged there is room for improvement when it comes to the force's public relations, but rejects the idea that it is uncaring. He also says he's keeping an open mind on the reason for the high number of disappearances, including possible organ trade operating on the island. When I was on the police department, I'd go to the Caribbean once every other year. And there was almost like an exchange program. We knew people there, they knew people here, they would come up to visit. We'd go down there to visit, treated like kings. And that's a different level. And again, we were always going to islands that were safe. In this case, I can't use the excuse that they're underpaid. I'm sorry. I think police are underpaid in most cities in America these days. But people who want to be police officers want to do a good job, most of them. I know some of you are going to say, oh no, Dave, no. Hey, I've been around them, I've worked around them, I know. The vast majority are super great people that are trying to do their best. I've worked around a few that I stayed away from when I was on the police department. I purposely, when I saw that they were going to work a certain area, I'd get out, stay away from them. They were just trouble. But the majority of people I ever worked with were the best. And the people that get into police work want to do good for society. On these islands, I really question that. While some may have disappeared due to the involvement of criminal activities, there's a growing concern that it may be something else. Police say they're collating official figures on missing people covering the last 2 decades, but by the time of publication had not provided any figures. In late January, Orden David did not return home after a night out at a local casino. Orden's burned-out car has since been recovered, but there have been few clues. Aline Henry recalls Orden as her best friend for 23 years. The worst part is not knowing if he's being held against his will. Is someone abusing him, torturing him? He was 39, well known in Antigua as a key litigant in a landmark 2022 case that overturned legislation criminalizing same-sex acts. I can't explain how much it hurts that instead of focusing on the fact he's missing, some people focus on him being gay. I believe the case has been made him a target. Keon Richards, 38, who works for a national school meals program, last seen leaving work on the 26th of February. His mom, Diane Clark, says she's trying to stay positive, adding, you hear about people going missing in the news, then it creeps you out. Hindering investigations is the lack of a local forensic lab, which means crucial DNA samples may be sent overseas for analysis. That's an excuse. Going out, doing the legwork, contacting witnesses, talking to suspects is all basic police work. I don't care what country you're in. And talking to people like they're human, giving them options. Yeah, if you tell me the truth, we have option A. If you lie to me, you have option B. Okay? And in a place like Antigua, where maybe the educational level of some of their police officers is not as high as it should be, that's why you have people that are trying to cut corners and not trying to do the right thing. Now, just by chance, the Bigfoot cruise we're going on this summer stops in St. Kitts. Very safe, very safe. I wouldn't go on the cruise and I wouldn't get off in St. Kitts unless it was safe. Now, the State Department lists advisories, 4 levels of advisories. The 4th one is don't travel. There are none in the Caribbean other than Haiti that I know about. There's a lot of 3s right now and some 2s. As an example of cooperation. Private investigators will cooperate with each other, and I don't care what state they're in. 99% of them will. You go to another country, it's going to be almost impossible to find someone to help. The Natalie Holloway case, where she disappeared down there, everybody and their brother who was a cop knew she'd been abducted. The country did almost nothing. As it turned out, because one of the officials in the country, his son, did it. But that's part of the problem. You don't know who's a good person and who's a bad person. In Mexico, almost everybody's a bad person. Even the government is a bad person most of the time. Why is that? Because they're bribed and they're told to look the other way. And unless we as Americans stop traveling there totally, that would force the government to clean up their country. As long as we keep going there and giving them our dollars, there's no reason to clean it up. Obviously, we don't care. We keep going. It's a bad scene. Bad scene. I feel very sorry for families that get victimized. It's one of the reasons I became a policeman. I hated people being victimized. I hated it. And it made my heart good every day I went to work and I could figure I could help somebody somehow. So we have 2 cases today. First one is a very strange case, if I say the least. And it's in an area where there's not a lot of activity in what I do. Right on the North Dakota-Montana border. Now, I've had cases just over the Montana border out in the plains there. A lot of the cases are unusual. Car found on the side of the road. They search for 2 weeks. They don't find anything around the car, in the prairies, plains, nothing out there. A couple years later, some people are moving cattle in the plains 7-8 miles away. They come across the skeleton of the person in the car. What's that person doing way out in the middle of the plains that many miles from the car? Yeah. And it had broken bones. So how did the bones get broken? Did it fall out of the sky? Now, as you go into North Dakota from Montana, that we have a lot of ICBM locations, a lot of nuclear sites, and a lot of UFO sightings. Yes. Yes. So, just so you know. Now, this first case involves a man named Storian Restoff. Kind of an unusual name. 74 years old, went missing May 1st, 1960. He was a homesteader. He homesteaded in Buckhorn, Wyoming. Became a U.S. citizen in 1913. Homesteading means that the government will give you a piece of land if you live on it and develop it. You live on it, develop it, it becomes yours. Well, he was missing near the Wyoming-Dakota border west of Savoy, North Dakota. He lived in that area for 55 years. Rancher, knew the terrain. And here's the kicker. Multiple articles described him as crippled. Now in 1959, he sold his ranch, made some good money, and he moved to Newcastle. He was single, his wife died, had no kids, lived alone. Now, he was last seen May 1st, 18 miles north of Newcastle at a place called Four Corners Store. Now, Newcastle is down in this area. He drove his truck up into this area, near Tinton. Here's Wyoming over here. Now, he knew this whole area like you know your back of your hands, because when you're out here going back and forth across the border, you hardly even know you're doing it unless there's a sign. The further you go this way, the bigger the trees and the woods get. Out this way, there's not much. And then just south of here is a location that was in our UFO movie, Medicine Bow National Forest. It's a big forest. It extends way up from Wyoming to near the Dakotas. Now, Storian hadn't been seen for a couple days. People got nervous. Sheriffs got notified. On May 7th, they found his truck just over the South Dakota border, and they started a search and rescue. They actually got the South Dakota National Guard out, and they got bloodhounds out to search. The truck was found in an area of extreme mud. They said it almost looked like he skidded to a stop, sunk down in this mud at the frontage of a gate that went into a field. He didn't know anybody out there. Nobody knew why he was there. And it didn't make sense that he'd be that far from home. Now, they found the tracks in the mud, but they quickly went away because it was raining and light snow during part of the time. Game wardens, deputies, National Guard, all were out searching for Storian. Now remember, they described him as crippled. So how far could a crippled man go in the mud? That was the question that they were asking each other. That's Hug. The Weston County Sheriff kept searching. He had some private planes fly over the area. They had prospectors and ranchers assist for a week. To pull prospectors out and to pull ranchers away takes a lot. But they did. And the National Guard stayed out for a week. The sheriff was confused because they knew Storian couldn't walk well. And in this area where he disappeared, there wasn't a lot of ground cover. Not in that area. Now, he appeared to be walking towards a town called Tinton. Tinton is an old ghost town in Lawrence County. Founded in 1876, it was a gold mining town. In 1933, in order to build revenue for the city, they built a sawmill. It's since closed. Tinton's an interesting town. If you're ever in that area, go by. There's a lot of the buildings that are still up. Makes for an interesting walkthrough. Well, the search and rescue kept going till the middle of May. They weren't having any luck. Canines weren't picking up a scent trail. It had rained several times, no tracks. And nobody could believe that Storian could outwalk the area that they had searched. So they were at the stalemate. Now, again, this is the truck. He lived down here in Newcastle. And then here's Tinton. He's walking towards Tinton. And then this is a place called Crow Peak. Crow Peak is a large mountain peak, the predominant peak in the area. Part of the Black Forest, elevation at 5,760 feet. It's dominant. November 21st, 1960. 4 young men are out hunting together. And as they're walking along at the bottom of this cliffy mountainside, they come across a skeleton laying on the ground with clothes on it. Well, they rumble around and they come across some things on the body. They know the sheriff's got to be told. So they take the person's wallet and a small amount of cash, and they return it to the sheriff. Sheriff says, come on and show me where it is. They go back and it's right around Crow Peak. Sheriff made a statement that's interesting. He said that it appears that Storian walked off a cliff. Walked off a cliff? 8 air miles from his truck, meaning he walked at least 20 plus miles to get to where he was located, with no food and no water. Never listed a cause of death, and there were no comments ever about any broken bones on him. Not an area I can see anybody ever walking off a cliff. I'm sorry. Now, on June 14th, 1962, the state decided that they were going to have an estate sale for Storian's property. He didn't have any living relatives. So they sold his 1949 Chevy 1-ton pickup, a Magic Chef heater, a couch, a bed, some farm scales, some small tools that he had in his little house. Now, this area of western South Dakota, strange cases there. Eastern Montana, strange cases there. Eastern Wyoming, same thing as Eastern Montana, strange cases. And that area of Wyoming, just like Montana, wide open nothingness. Storian disappeared in close proximity to the Medicine Bow National Forest. And remember, in Missing 411, the UFO connection, which you can watch on Amazon, Apple TV. You can watch it right now. Please go watch it. It's free. Hunter Carl, in that show, was hunting in the Medicine Bow National Forest by himself when he was abducted by what he claimed was aliens. And in all of the experts, even the naysayers, they all stated that that was the one case they could ever find where there was physical evidence of what Carl said happened to him, which is why it was in our movie. And I know it's an easy thing to point to say, well, this could be happening to hunters, but I'd be an idiot if I didn't point to it and say, we need to pay attention to this. And how many hunters have just literally disappeared off the face of the earth? Yeah. How many hikers? Yeah. So I'm not saying that this is what happened to Storian, and then they dumped him. But that's kind of the same thing that happened to Carl. They dropped him out of the ship and he rolled down a hillside, hurt his shoulder. He even said so. Well, what if they drop you a little high and you die? Yeah, could happen. That's the story of Storian Restoff. First of all, I don't believe he could make it that far, neither did the sheriff because he was crippled. So a lot of 411 mystery there. Next case, we're going to go to New Zealand. It's on my bucket list to go to. Someplace I've flown over it on my way to Australia for a book tour, but we're in a kind of a rush 2-week trip and we didn't get a chance to come back and stop. But New Zealand's on my bucket list. I want to come see you guys. The man who disappeared was a man named Troy Adrian Liddington, 37 years old. This is Troy, a rough and tumble guy, outdoorsman, living under any circumstances, tough. He was Maori, and he knew how to live in the outdoors for weeks, per his family. He was missing from the northern peninsula of New Zealand. I'm not even going to attempt to butcher the name because that'd be embarrassing. But that orange area right here is where he was missing from. This is the northern part of the island. This area is really thick with wild bush, trees. There are trails. Right next to the ocean. And New Zealand is an island, for what it's worth. Well, his mother, his name was Hootie, said Troy had been to this exact area many times in the past. It wasn't an area he was afraid of. It's an area that he liked, and he liked to go there, scenery. He practiced his native culture. Whenever he went into the bush, he always carried a lighter. Why do you carry a lighter? Because fire is life. That's right. Fire is life. Well, he traveled to the area with his family, his brother and others. And he stayed the night at a place called Wapua Visitor Center. And he stayed at a home right near the Department of Conservation Center, like right next to it. Well, on the 13th, his second day, he told his brother, hey, I'm going to go for a hike. Nothing unusual about it. He loved hiking the area. There's a lot of rivers, streams, lush, beautiful. Brother didn't think two shakes about it. It was something that Troy always liked to do, always came back with good stories. So on the 13th, little afternoon, he took off. Everyone expected him back about 4 or 5. 4 or 5 came around, he didn't come back. Now, that was on the 13th. Nobody thought anything about it. The next day, they thought he'd rumble in about noon. He didn't come back. He didn't come back that night. Now, you and me and everybody else in the world would think, oh, this is odd. I think I need to call law enforcement because I need to get some help. This isn't normal. Well, the family didn't call until the 15th. He didn't return. Troy wasn't there. Family still really wasn't concerned. His brother said at the time that Troy could live for weeks in the bush by himself with nothing. That's how self-sustaining he is. Well, the constable that got the case was a man named Spence Penny. Now, he went missing on October 13th, 2010. Supposed to be back about 4 p.m. They call the constables on the 15th. Penny gets a crew together, 30 ground pounders, helicopter, canines, and he goes at it. He goes at it hard. because he thinks something really odd has happened to somebody as well-trained as Troy. Spence did tell the public in an interview that it didn't help that the family members waited 2 days to report Troy missing. In those 2 days, it could mean the difference between life and death. Say he got trapped in the water somewhere, hypothermia could set in and kill you. What if he was in the back country and he broke his leg? I've told you 100 times. You break your leg in the bush, in the back country, you're not crawling your way out. I've broken my leg before, my tib fib. There's nothing more painful in the world I can think of. I just moved myself a fraction of an inch and I almost started screaming. It hurts a lot. If you break your fibula, your big bone between your hip and your knee, whew, I can't even understand how that would feel. But the point is, you break your leg out there, unless someone finds you, you're going to die out there. And before I forget, I always talk about a personal locator beacon. Always talk about that all the time, everywhere, blah, blah, blah. Well, now, you don't need to go out and buy a personal locator beacon anymore. You just need to have your cell phone on the right service provider, and that right service provider will have a satellite connection from your phone. I know one right now is T-Mobile. You buy a cell phone, you put your service with T-Mobile, you don't need a personal locator beacon because they have the contacts, and your cell phone will work just like a personal locator beacon when you put it in emergency mode. It's outstanding. It's outstanding. And if you're a hunter or a hiker who likes to go out alone, and every hunter likes to go out alone, you need to get that. Well, the search went on for 5 days. No tracks, no evidence where Troy might be. Nobody had seen him in days. Everyone was very concerned. Hootie, the mom, was getting mad because the searchers were making innuendos that they were going to stop after 5 days. 5 days is the low end of a normal search. Normal search in the US, 7-8 days. If you push it, you could get 10 days. 5 days is a little low. Well, October 20th was the end of the search. November 30th, the government had contractors that they had hired to go into the wilderness and spray for invasive weeds in the woods. One of the contractors was way out, and he was on the upper banks of a river, and he walked up to a pile of clothes. He said it looked odd and out of place. Didn't quite know what to make of it, but he told his supervisor, who told the government supervisors for the area, who sent a police officer out, and they confiscated the clothing. They confiscated the clothing and they drove it to Hootie, the mother, who said, "That's Troy's clothing." Well, the odd thing is that the police said that they covered that area where they found the clothing multiple times, and that clothing wasn't there when it was searched. So they went back again into the same area where this weed abatement officer found the clothing. And they thought, well, he must be alive. Otherwise, how would his clothes get there? Police went back, searched for 2 days. They found no evidence that Troy was in the area. They found no fires, no camping gear, no campsite where somebody would chop down trees, make a bed like Troy would. They again made a statement that Troy is an experienced Maori woodsman and he could live in the wilderness for weeks. December 6th, the same year, there was an unconfirmed sighting of Troy at a West Coast supermarket, begging for food. There are pictures of Troy everywhere in New Zealand for weeks. Somebody saw the poster and thought that that man looked like Troy, so they called the police. By the time the police got there, this man was gone. But they discounted the sighting and they didn't think it was credible or it could have been him. So now, Troy was a man with 4 kids. Nobody believed he would voluntarily disappear. His family said he cared about his kids, loved his family. So what happened here? The family really went after the government and their 5-day search. And they thought that they were getting mistreated because they were on the poor side of the economic scale. So when you go back and look at this, when it happened in 2010, it's 2025 now, 15 years. Troy's never been found. But they used canines. They found clothing that was taken off of him. Around water, lack of tracks, point of separation. Very, very unusual case. And when you look at New Zealand, how small of a country it is, you'd be a bit surprised to find how many people are missing there. And it's not just New Zealand natives. A lot of people who travel there disappear. I've talked about many of them right here on this show. And that's what intrigues me about that country. It's someplace I want to go to. And besides the fact they've got great trout fishing in New Zealand, so I'd have to find an excuse to go there, give a talk in front of some New Zealanders, sell some books, and go trout fishing. In fact, somebody from New Zealand asked me if I was planning on being there, and I said, well, if you put together a conference, I'll show up, So you're on my bucket list. So friends, thanks. One thing I haven't talked a lot about is kindness. I haven't talked about it much lately. And mental health. People ask me all the time, Dave, what was the website you talked about for mental health assistance? NAMI, N-A-M-I. It's free. Their classes are outstanding. I took a 12-week class. It's one of the best classes I ever took. It was to deal with Ben and his bipolar. It was the most enlightening 12 weeks I've ever spent anywhere. I learned so much. They brought in people with bipolar to talk to the parents, and some parents brought in their kids with them. That was fascinating to hear from the kids about how tough of life they are living with this condition. Tore me up. And then they brought in speakers, some people that have lived through it. Unbelievable. You will have a whole new perspective on mental health after taking that class. And I remember times as a police officer, maybe I didn't like dealing with mental health patients. And the reason I didn't like dealing with them is because even back when I was a policeman, resources were scanty at best. They're worse today. Nobody wants to take care of these people. We need a complete overhaul of our system. We need mental health facilities with trained professionals in them. And we don't have it. Even big cities don't have enough. So I appreciate you being here. I will apologize for Huck snoring and disrupting this provocative presentation. In the meantime, remember, go to Kickstarter.com, and we need help, folks. We need help in a big way. We have the National Park movie still being funded. We need the funds badly, and we need people to jump on board. go to Kickstarter.com, and there's several funding levels, all the way from $5 to $10,000. And remember, you can go to Gather Up Events. I'll be on the cruise in November 2025 to the Caribbean to St. Kitts. Thanks again for being here. You be safe.